Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Courtney and this is my life of projects where I share with you all of my crafty things, including knitting, spinning, quilting, and the occasional embroidery project. Today I wanted to do more of a sit-down video and I thought I would share with you my favorite thing, which is knitting socks. So I'm going to tell you about my very first pair of socks that I knit, the mistakes that I made, the pattern that I typically use, really the only pattern that I use, the tools that I prefer to have for sock knitting, and pull out my entire collection of socks and show you all of the ones that I've made over 14 years of sock knitting. So I started knitting socks in 2009. I had to go back through Ravelry and look, but that's the date that I started. I took a sock class and learned how to knit from the yarn shop that eventually I ended up working at. There was a wonderful lady there that taught socks. She had a pattern that she had developed. It's a plain vanilla top-down sock in the round using magic loop. And that is still the pattern that I use. I have it memorized and I don't think it's available on Ravelry, but I will find a similar one for you and link it down in the description. So before I started knitting socks, I had mostly knit scarves and hats. I started knitting in 2006. So I was about 3 years in when I decided I wanted to try to knit socks for the first time. And since then, I counted for this video, and my pile of socks is over here. You can't see it. But I counted, and I have 21 pairs that I've knit myself for me. And then I have 11 or 12 pair that I have knit for other people and given away. So 32, 33-ish pairs of socks knit in total, soon to be 34. And I have 21 of those for myself. So I keep most of the socks that I knit. I tend to give away a lot of things that I make, but socks are one thing that I make mostly for me. So as I mentioned, I do a plain vanilla sock that is knit top down in the round using the magic loop technique. I have tried toe up one time, did not like it. I've told myself I'm going to try again because I would really like to be able to take a ball of yarn, split it in two, and then be able to knit two socks as tall as I can knit them. Because right now, I can never knit them as tall as I feel like I could with the amount of yarn that I have, because I don't know when I'm going to run out and not have enough for the toe, if that makes sense. But if you're doing toe up, you can just knit until you're done, and then do the cuff and you're good. So I'd like to learn toe up, but it's just, this was the pattern I have memorized. So it's pretty basic and it's hard to get me to do anything else. I've also tried a patterned pair of socks. I have a cabled, I think it's faux cabling, pair of socks on the needles. They've been there for like 10 years. Have not finished. I think I finished one sock and I'm working on the second. Which brings me to my next topic, which is second sock syndrome. So I know that's a thing and I don't fully understand it. So is it just that like you knit the first one and then you get bored and you want to do like a different project? And like you just don't want to knit the second sock? Like did you just not enjoy knitting the first sock so you don't want to do the second one? Like what is second sock syndrome? Because I have never had it. I don't know what this experience is. And that's kind of surprising. Like with me having ADHD, you would think that I'd be like bored and put the thing down and like walk away. No. That has never been a thing that I've experienced. Like once one sock is done, literally I will finish the Kitchener stitch and then cast on the second sock. I am like ready to go. I don't know why that is. I think I am maybe an anomaly. If you do have second sock syndrome, I'm sorry. And I don't know how to help you. I do not know. I have no advice for that. I have never had that experience in my life and I just don't understand it. So my apologies, I'm sure that sucks because I know I've watched other people's YouTube videos that have like 3 or 4 different sock projects and none of them are done. That like breaks my heart. That like hurts me deeply. So I'm really sorry if you have second sock syndrome and I'm sorry I can't help, but that's never a thing I've had. I do know people do 2 at a time socks to like combat that. never had the interest in trying that. That seems like there's too much going on, too many things for me to have to keep track of, and you have 2 balls of yarn. I know you can do it from the inside and the outside, but no. Nope, that stresses me out, just the thought of it. I'm very happy with my one sock pattern, my one way of doing socks. So I don't call myself a sock expert because I really only have one method. I do one thing, and that is the thing that we do. And I feel like I do that one well. But if you have questions about like DPNs or toe-up socks or 2 at a time or really anything that isn't a top-down plain vanilla sock in this method, I am of no help. Am of no help at all. So one thing I should mention really quickly is I'm not going to go through every single pair of socks that I have. I just don't think it's that interesting. Some of them are just like, this is a pair of socks I knit. There's nothing to really say about them. I like them. I wear them sometimes. Not a lot else to share. So I'm not going to put every single pair of the 21 pairs of socks in this video, but there will be pictures and images of them elsewhere. And if you really want to go through my Ravelry page, you can find them all there. Let's start with my very first pair of socks, which I don't have. So I'm going to pop in a picture over here. So these were the socks that I did for the class that I took at the yarn store. And I ended up giving these to my mom. I thought it would be a nice gift, some nice warm wool socks because she is always cold. And I'm willing to bet she's maybe worn them all at one time. She thinks wool is too itchy. She does not like it. So she did not really enjoy those socks, but that's okay. It was still a good learning experience for me. And to be fair, the yarn that I used for those is really probably not my favorite. It was the Zitron Trekking Hand Art yarn, and I do remember that being a little bit more scratchy than some other sock yarns, and I will talk about my favorite base in a little bit when I get to a pair of socks that uses that base. So that's the first pair of socks that I knit. I did make a few mistakes. I remember, I think it was on the heel turn, and somehow I got turned around backwards and started knitting the sock in the opposite directions. So if you're knitting English, then your yarn is typically in your right hand and you're knitting from right to left. And somehow I ended up going, I think I turned the project like this and was knitting. So the purls were on the outside. So like I was knitting it like this. So facing the wrong way, if that makes sense on camera. But I think one of the heels is inside out with the purls on the outside. I need to see if she still has those socks. Because that would be interesting to look back on. But I know I definitely knit at least part of it inside out and then had to fix that and like flip the sock around and figure out like how I was actually supposed to do magic loop. But that was my first time learning socks, first time learning magic loop, first time learning how to do the heel turn, and the first time learning the Kitchener stitch. So a lot of time and effort went into those socks, and I was very, very proud of them. So I think that these are the second socks that I knit. I tried to go through Ravelry and put it in chronological order, but I don't think I dated things correctly. But so I knit these little short socks out of, I think it's Shopple Wool. I don't think it's a crazy Zobber ball, but it was a self-striping ball, and to me these are Halloween colors, which I love Halloween. So I knit these in 2010 according to Ravelry. So I discovered that I really like knitting short socks because I could practice all of the skills in a fairly short time period. So I have made a couple pair of shorter socks over the years, and I do have a much smaller foot than average, I guess. So I have a size 6.5 foot. So I've found that I can get one long-ish pair of socks out of a skein, like a 400-yard skein, and then I can also get a short sock pair out of that. So I can really make the yarn go a long way doing that. But this was a smaller ball. I don't think it had 400 yards. And I knit these, and I don't think I knit anything with the rest of the ball. But again, I was still learning. You can tell I did not do a good job at weaving in my end right there, and it's coming out a little bit. But other than that, these are still in pretty good condition. There's definitely some fuzzing and pilling, but no holes, not too bad. So I am very happy that I do still have some of my older socks. Actually, of all of the socks I've made, I've never actually worn through any of them. And I do try to be careful with how I treat them and take good care of them, but I've never worn holes in any of them, knock on wood. I don't want to. All of my socks are still intact. I've not had to make any repairs on them. And I think that's partially because of how little I wear them. I tend to wear them more around the house than out with shoes and things. Then I also think some of that is the base that I've found that I try to use if I can find a yarn that uses the base that I like. If that makes sense. All right, let's look at what else we have. So this is a pair of socks that I knit from a leftover skein. I had knit my aunt a pair of socks and then I had yarn left over, so I was able to make myself another little pair of short socks. These were also around 2010 and they've held up really well. For the shorter socks like this, these are the ones that I tend to wear around the house. I don't really wear these with shoes. I used to. I would wear them with my Sperry's occasionally, but I don't even own Sperry's anymore, so they mostly are just house socks at this point. But I really like having these little short socks, and I also think that doing a shorter sock like this is great for a beginner sock knitter. If you've never knit socks before and you want to get started, doing a short sock saves you a lot of time because you don't have that long tube that goes up the leg. You can do the cuff, start the heel turn if you're doing top down, and go down the foot and then do the toe. So you get all of the skills in a much shorter time period. So I really recommend for beginners to do a short sock like this. This is probably my favorite pair of short socks. I absolutely love this yarn and this colorway, and this is the yarn that kind of helped me find my favorite base. So this yarn is from Unplanned Peacock, who is an indie dyer. I will have their stuff linked down below. She was a good friend in 2010-11. I actually lived near her. I met her at a local yarn shop, figured out that we lived close to each other, and I ended up helping out in her dye studio, mostly like skeining yarn and winding balls and things like that, and I was paid in yarn, which was fantastic. So this is the mermaid colorway. I don't even know if she still dyes this, but it was and still is kind of one of my absolute favorites. I just love that like darker denim with a little bit of kind of maroon and pink and beige popping through. I love these socks and I've taken really good care of them because I only had a limited amount of this yarn, so I wanted to make sure it lasted. So I only knit a short sock pair. I still have the rest of this ball somewhere, and I think I do have one other skein of this yarn that I've been hoarding for years because I love it so much. So that's probably one of my like top 5 favorite pairs of socks that I've made. So these are one of the first socks of a longer, taller variety that I made for myself and actually kept. By this time, I'd made my mom a pair and a couple of my aunts. I finished these in late, I think, November of 2010. These are Blue Ridge Yarns Kaleidoscope. I think they actually came with like a separate, I know a lot of the Kaleidoscope yarns come with like a separate heel and toe color, and I didn't want to use them because I didn't want to switch colors while I was knitting socks. And you'll see as we go through my sock collection, I own exactly 0 pairs of socks with the contrasting cuff and heel. I have knit them and then I gave them away. I don't know what it is, I just want them all one color. But I do actually have some yarn that has that contrasting mini skein with it that I think I'm going to like. So I might switch it up in the future, but I mean, it's been 14 years, so I kind of tend to gravitate towards what I like. But I was teaching high school at the time, and these were the colors of the high school I taught at, so I made these to wear to work. One thing that I have noticed that has changed over the years is I used to do a really short little cuff, and now it is drastically longer. So I have some footage of one of the earlier pairs of socks that I made with one of the most recent pairs, and you can really see the difference in the cuff. So I like the longer cuff now, even though doing knit and purl takes a little bit longer than just doing straight knit stitch. I like the longer cuff because it really helps keep the sock up on my leg where I want it to be. It doesn't slide down as much. And I just like the way that that bigger cuff looks as well. So that's one change that has definitely happened over the past 14 years of sock knitting. So this pair of socks was my first like splurge purchase. So these are knit from the Sweet Georgia Tough Love sock yarn, and this is my favorite base. So it's an 80/20 merino nylon blend, and it's a 2-ply yarn. The Unplanned Peacock is 100% wool, but it is a 2-ply yarn. And just the way that bases that are A, 2-ply, and B, have that merino nylon blend are so like nice and springy, and it's a very round yarn. It just, for me, works fantastically for socks. I really at this point will not buy a sock yarn if it's not the base that I like because if I've bought them in the past, they just sit in my stash forever and I never use them. That was really kind of my biggest realization, was this is the base that I like. This is what I want all of my socks to be knit out of. And that's what I have stuck with for the most part. There's 1 or 2 exceptions, which I will show you, but 80/20, 2-ply base, that's all I need in life. Makes me happy. But the Sweet Georgia was the first time that I'd really found like the expensive yarn, and I really do love Sweet Georgia's yarns. So I'm very happy with these socks. I've worn them quite a bit and they have held up super, super well. You can see a little bit of felting there, and actually you can see right there, I either knit backwards or I purled when I should have knit. That's the heel turn. So yeah, I made a little mistake there, but you know what? No one has said anything about it in however many years ago I made these, so it's fine. We don't care. I still love these socks so much. So this is another really special pair of socks. These are in the Unplanned Peacock yarn base, and these are my engagement socks. So this should tell you how much of a sock knitter I was even back in like 2013. My spouse proposed to me with knitting. So I'd been working on these socks, and I always have a project bag with a sock in it somewhere. So we'd been doing a bunch of things. We'd gone out to a nice lunch. It was the weekend, and we were sitting down, and of course I was going to knit on socks while we watched a movie or something. And I was knitting, and he kept like looking over at me and trying to get me to like knit faster. And I didn't know like what was wrong with him. So I'm just knitting along, and all of a sudden I'm like tugging on the yarn to try to get more of it to come out of the project bag, and a little jewelry box pops out with the yarn. So he had taken the ring box and closed it over the leading yarn. Like he knew enough to figure out like this yarn is attached to the project. Okay, this is what will come out of the bag. So he'd attached the ring box and it came out in my lap, and then he got down on one knee and proposed. So it was really cute. So these are my engagement socks. I take very good care of them, and I don't wear them a lot because they are special. So they have really good memories. But yeah, you know you're a sock knitter when someone uses socks to propose to you. So these are one of my not favorite sock projects that I did, but I've kept them because I can't get rid of hand knit socks unless I'm giving them to someone who will appreciate them. So this was a base that I got somewhere, and then I dyed it. It's just too thick. And I really think it might have like some cotton in it too. Like, I don't know what I was doing when I attempted this, but I made just short socks out of it because I think the yarn is thicker and not exactly a sock weight. But I was just playing around with dyeing. I really love the dye pattern that it makes when it's knit up, but they're just not a color I wear a lot, and I don't like the thickness of these, and they also don't have a lot of stretch because I'm pretty sure this has cotton in it. So I made these. I'm not in love with them. They exist. We're okay with it. So now we're getting into more recent socks. These were in, I think, 2015 or so, and I wanted more neutral colors. I had a lot, if you've not noticed, of really bright, vibrant colors, and I didn't wear those as much as I wanted to. So I started to gravitate more towards neutrals, and I'm still kind of doing that. You'll definitely see in my favorite pair of socks that it's not exactly neutral, but it's much more of a solid. So there are some socks that I wear a lot more than others just because they go with more things, and this is one of those pairs. I really like the grays, the creams, and the beiges in these, and I've tried to be more careful when I'm buying sock yarn. So the first thing I look for is the base, but then the colors. I have to think about, am I actually going to wear these? Like, if these were socks, where would I wear them? What outfit would I put on? Or are these just gonna be another pair that I wear around the house? So I'm trying to be more mindful about how I purchase my yarn and making sure that it's going to be something I'm actually going to use. So thinking through the color is really important for me, having knit so many socks at this point. I have more than enough to choose from, so I really need to think about what is and isn't in my collection and if they're going to actually have a purpose. So these are another one of my absolute favorite pairs of socks. These are knit from the Fibro Fibers sock yarn, which is now discontinued. I think this was the Nightfall colorway. She had several, I'm assuming it was a she. I feel like that's right. I could be wrong. I don't know. There were several balls of yarn in this collection that started with a color and then did a gradient down to black, hence the Nightfall. The green is the only one that I got, but I absolutely love these. I want more socks like this with just the two colors. That's right up my alley. Not too much, not too overwhelming. And I love the look of these, and I'm so sad that this yarn is discontinued. If you know of anyone else that does yarn dyeing like this in a gradient, please leave me a note, leave me a comment, point me in their direction, because I definitely want more yarn like this. I do remember not loving this base. It's 100% merino, and I couldn't find the ply, but I think it's like a 4-ish ply. It wasn't the one that makes my heart happy, but I still love the socks anyway, so worth it. And if I could find more yarn like this, I probably wouldn't care a whole lot about the base and would buy anyway. So one of my absolute favorites. So these are one of my absolute favorite pairs of socks because they are from My Hand Spun. So this was Hedgehog Fibers merino nylon sock base roving. So it has the nylon in it, and I spun this in a 2-ply. It is much thicker than regular sock yarn. So these socks are definitely thicker than my normal socks. I really only wear these around the house, but I obsessively love how they look. Like, I love how the colors have kind of a gradient going on. I love how they knit up. I love everything about these socks. Even though like this blue is kind of my least favorite color in the world, don't care. I love these socks so much. But they really never go outside of the house. I'm just like super proud of them that I was able to go from spinning, and it was around the time I learned how to spin, like 2015, 2016, to knitting a pair of socks. So it just makes my heart so happy. I love these so much. These are one of my favorite pairs, and I take extra good care of them, which means I don't wear them much. But that's okay. They make me happy, even if they're just in a drawer. So these are another pair of socks that I wear only at one time of the year. So these are part of my Halloween sock collection, which I'm working on building up, because Halloween is really the time where I will wear much more vibrant and crazy colors because I'm mostly wearing all black. So having Halloween socks makes me really happy. And these are Blue Ridge yarns, Kaleidoscope again. Their base is also one that I absolutely love. It is 100% wool, but it has that 2-ply and that bounce that I really like. So I knit these around 2017, and I really only wear them at Halloween because I don't wear this color of green ever. But they are fantastic Halloween socks, and I really enjoy having as many Halloween socks as I can knit. So this is probably my current absolute favorite pair of socks. These are in the Great Expectations colorway from Positive Ease, and I really love the very light amount of variegation throughout. I wear these so much in the fall. They are fantastic with my Birkenstocks, with my Birkenstock sandals, with my Doc Martens. They make me so happy. I absolutely love this color. I like that there is still some variance in the yarn. You can tell that they're handmade if you get close enough, but I like that they are almost solid, and I think I really want to find more sock yarn like this that can be kind of a basic in my wardrobe, because I have worn these more than a lot of other pairs of socks that I've knit. So I really want to try to make more socks that I will wear much more frequently. So these are probably my absolute favorite pair of socks that I own. So these are another one of my favorite pairs of socks that I have knit recently, and they're one of the favorite pairs of socks that I own. These are in the hot sock base from Skin Cocaine, and you've seen me talk about these before, but her sock base, Gina knows what she was doing. This is a merino nylon 80-20 blend, and it's that bouncy, round, perfect sock yarn. So I absolutely love this base and this colorway because even though it does have a lot going on, it's still, once you knit it up, toned down enough that I feel like I can wear it with a lot of different things. So that's one other thing that I wanted to just chat about briefly is how I wear my hand knit socks. So I did mention that for the shorter socks, I tend to really only wear those around the house these days. I can wear them with a couple pairs of sneakers that I own, but mostly those are just house socks. But for the taller pairs of socks, I really like to wear them with either jeans that are cuffed so that you can see the sock underneath, and a pair of Birkenstocks, or I like to wear them with my leggings and then either my Doc Martens so you can see the socks over the leggings coming out of the boots. And then probably the most frequent pairing that I have is my hand knit socks with my Birkenstock Arizonas or my Birkenstock Bostons. So it's a very Vermont thing, socks and Birkenstocks, and I definitely love showing off my hand knit socks wearing my Birkenstocks around Vermont. It makes me happy, makes me feel like a true Vermonter. But those are kind of the main ways that I will wear my hand knit socks to show them off. For the tools that I use for my method of knitting socks, since I do magic loop, I need a pair of needles that is usually, I think, a 32 or 40-inch cable, and usually size 2 or 3. I tend to prefer the metal needles over wood for sock knitting. It just goes a lot easier in my opinion. I feel like the wood ones can catch a little bit too much on the yarn for me. I do like wood needles for other purposes, but I tend to gravitate much more towards the just regular. These are probably Addies in a size, it looks like a 3 to me, and a 32 or 40-inch cable makes it really easy to do the magic loop, because for magic loop you want to have enough of the plasticky cable thing on each end so you have the ability to kind of manipulate the project and move it around as you're going. So I'm not explaining magic loop in this video, but I will try to link some videos of people explaining magic loop for you. Point being, I always have my standard sock knitting needle. That's step one in my sock kit. Then the other tools that I have in my sock knitting bag are one single marker. I just need one stitch marker, and I absolutely have to have it, but when I'm doing the heel turn, and it's actually when I am reducing the number of stitches, bringing the foot and heel back together, it's this little portion right here. On one side, the place where you're reducing your number of stitches is at the end of the row, so that's easy. The other side, it is not. It is kind of in the middle. It's like 28 stitches in. So I put one marker there so that I know that's where I need to do a decrease. And other than that, I don't really use any markers for my socks. Then for me, I always keep the knit kit in my sock knitting bag because it has everything I could possibly need, including that marker. Really though, the only things I actually need out of here are a tapestry needle for finishing the sock, doing the Kitchener stitch and weaving in the ends, and the scissors for cutting the yarn, but that's kind of optional. Like you could just like pull real hard and cut it apart, but I like to use the scissors. So those are really the only things that I use when I'm knitting socks. So I've got my needles, I have one stitch marker, tapestry needle, a pair of scissors, and I can make socks and be very, very happy. A lot of people do also swear by having sock blockers like this. Quite frankly, I did not own a pair of these until like 2018. I mean, if I wanted to block my socks, I just put them on my feet and wear them around. I am not that dedicated to like wetting them and blocking them and waiting. I'm like, I finished these, I must wear them right now. So I do like the sock blockers though for like taking pictures of them, and they look really nice when you have dried them on these, but I don't use them that often. I don't use them when I wash my socks, but I have a pair now. I'm okay with it. I don't consider these a must-have though. Really, the most critical parts for me are the needles and a sock base that I like. So the other things, well, the tapestry needle is pretty important. The Kitchener stitch is what you need that tapestry needle for, because you are joining those two edges of the front and the back of the sock at the toe to make that seamless join that looks like it was just knit. So I really love it because I love how it finishes the sock, but there are other methods of finishing socks, and you can do toe-up socks so you don't even have to Kitchener. I know that there are people that will not do top down because they don't want to have to do the Kitchener stitch. They dislike it that much. So there's all kinds of different ways of knitting socks out there. There's all types of different yarns to use for your socks. I'm not saying any of what I like or do is like the best way. These are just my preferences. This is what I find fun. And I really love knitting socks. So I hope some of this was entertaining, useful for you. And if you have any questions about sock knitting, feel free to leave them down below. I don't claim to be an expert. I'm just an expert in my one method. But I'd be happy to answer what I can. And let me know if you're a sock knitter, if you've ever had second sock syndrome. I'm so sorry. If you have tips for other people about it, definitely leave those in the comments so we can help each other out. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Please leave this video a like if you did enjoy it. And I will see you in the next one.